Look, sir, new pants.
What are you doing with that? Give me that!
All right, you scumballs, you have 30 minutes to show and get the plan. Let's go, move it, move it, move it. Pick it up, pick it up, asshole.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Schmat. And in this one, we're laying down the law, because it's about Police Academy. And with me, as ever, is that impeccable, intelligent, witty, amazing, brilliant Neil Stringer.
Hello.
Neil, you're going to have to shorten those intros that you sent me.
I know. A little too much hyperbole, I know, but...
And also with us today, our very special guest, Ian Lawler.
Oh, hold on a minute. He gets that long-winded introduction, and I get that very short
Yeah, but
introduction.
You're very special.
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me, guys.
And of course, today, as I said, Police Academy, these guys, you know, I always sort of said that to me, the first three, maybe even four, are, you know, where are the golden ones, and then after that, the quality dips. Now, I still hold true to that, but I do say, you know, basically 4, 5, and 6 were pretty good, you know, amusing. 6 was stretching it a little bit, but 7, well, by that stage the performances were holding up the movie. Well, they weren't terrible, I think, is my take from it all. They weren't as bad as, and perhaps maybe time has helped with these things and nostalgia. You know, it's not, Mission to Moscow is not as bad as I thought it would be. And Neil, going into this, I mean, what was your sort of idea of the series, and what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I've always had a soft spot for the Police Academy films. I've always found them quite funny to watch. When they always used to be on TV growing up and renting them out. And I have to say, I still find them hilarious. I mean, they're not masterpieces. They're not the greatest films ever made. But I think they're enjoyable. They're a lot of fun. They do. The quality does indeed dip as the films run on. But I think you can say that of a lot of film series of this genre. But most comedy films that keep going on like this, the quality does dip, and there's casting changes. And the casting changes probably don't have the charisma of the original actors. I'm namely talking about the legend that is Steve Guttenberg, who I think the quality dips further after he moves on.
Ian, what was your take on the whole thing?
Well, I came into it I had only seen the first two, because those seem to be the ones that were repeated quite a lot on TV that I remember growing up, and I really enjoyed, you know, what I seen of them. But for whatever reason, I didn't see any of them after the second one until we watched them. So for me, it was really interesting. And, you know, in fact, I didn't even realize they had 7 movies until you guys told me, which really shocked me because I thought, wow, they've really got their money's worth out of that franchise. But I really enjoy watching them. And while you could argue the quality definitely goes down after they lose Steve Guttenberg, I still think they're enjoyable romps. You know, that I had a good time watching. So yeah, really enjoyed them. If I had a criticism, I think when Steve Guttenberg left, they need maybe to find a new leading actor who was different from Steve Guttenberg. Whereas I think they tried to find someone who was similar, and I don't think it worked particularly well. But I still enjoyed them.
If we could take it back to the first movie, and we talk about Steve Guttenberg and his character of Carrie Mahoney, in a way, he's kind of the character that is kind of like the main character who's the kind of introduction into this world. Yeah, Tackleberry is the first character we see in the film because he's still a security guard when he's about to leave to join the police academy in the film. But Mahoney's got this journey where he starts off as this kind of layabout who kind of has trouble with the law, and he gets the opportunity to do something and join the police academy, and not go to jail, and then the whole journey is that he wants to get out, so he thinks if he gets kicked out, he will end up in jail. So that's his whole motivation in the first one, and and by the time we get to Police Academy 4, he's encouraging two other hoodlums, to join the Police Academy cop program, kind of going back to his role in the first one, where he's becoming the mentor to bring these people in the way that his character was in the original one. So he was giving these kids a chance that he had in the first one. So in a way, you kind of see a growth in Mahoney.
The other trainees in the first one, they sort of make him the leader of their group. He looks after them, he protects them from Harris, and he plays that role throughout the films he's in.
So yeah, exactly. He's like the main, because they all have their own subplots, but I feel like Mahoney's story is the main story because it's also the love interest with Kim Cattrall.
He comes across as a bit of a ladies' man throughout the series. He's always laying his moves on someone.
And also, and then there's other recurring jokes in the films as well, where he's the prankster as well. He's the one who plays pranks on Harris. Now, a lot of the supporting characters have also become, memorable characters in themselves. But they all do. I think as the films go on, they more or less play to their little tropes. Well, the character like Hightower will always be able to, so strong he can beat anyone or not beat.
He's a physical character. The strong man, very protective. And that was the problem when Steve Guttenberg left. I don't believe any of the rest of the cast had enough to be the main draw of those movies.
About Matt McCoy, he was not in terms of character, I suppose, but in terms of he tried in the first movie he was in to try it on with the ladies, and he just didn't have the charm. That's the thing. Guttenberg is, I suppose, like his screen counterparts in Three Men and a Baby and Three Men and a Lady. All those characters. They were all Tom Selleck and that. They were all very charismatic actors. But in a different way.
I would have went the exact opposite. I would have brought in a main character that's maybe different, but I don't think they really want to break the formula.
Then you got Hooks, who's got the really squeaky voice, but she ends up always getting really strict towards the end. It was, her catchphrase is always when she uses his voice is, "Don't move, dirtbag."
She starts off giving people a chance, and then she gets really annoyed, and then that's when she's like, right,
loses it.
The foghorn voice comes out then, but she tries to be polite, but then obviously people like Harris don't respect someone who doesn't take authority.
And then I guess the character who's the breakout character of the supporting characters is Jones, the great Mega Winslow, and his repertoire of voices and sound effects from his mouth.
That's my joke.
That's the best you could do. That's the best you can do. Well, in fairness, I wouldn't even try it. So
Michael Winslow, he took that trait. He did it in Spaceballs, and he did it in episode Baywatch Nights.
I thought he was great, but as the movies wore on, it was one of those things that it sort of got less impressive.
I think when he, whenever someone was a dick, he basically made them sound. He tried to humiliate them. So I did enjoy when he used to do the whenever they're walking, and the sort of the scratching of the nails on the wall whenever they were writing, all that kind of thing. But yeah, but he was a mentor as well.
Maybe one of the pluses of Steve Guttenberg and some of the others moving on was we got a bit more of the Sard, who's just a great, lovable character. He's, you know, and in a lot of the movies, they actually set him up as the hero and the guy that actually catches the bad guy. You think he's inept, but then he will be the one to catch the bad guy at the end. Sometimes he doesn't even realize he's doing it, but
He's very Mr. Magoo like in that way. If you've ever seen
yes,
Mr. Magoo cartoons, that's
very
what
much.
he reminds me of.
Yeah, but just a great performance.
Because the whole thing about number 5 is when they kidnap him, because they're at this event for his retirement, and he goes through the whole movie saying, "So what kind of thing have you got on? What's your thing? What's your little party thing going for this event?" So when they kidnap him, he thinks it's all part of the act. So he goes on with it. He goes along with them, chatting away to the kidnappers. Thinking it's giving him a hint, because he doesn't realize he's not catching on that it's not real.
The character's so lovable that the bad guy in the end doesn't want to kill him.
And yeah, and the performance of the bad guy in that comic strip, comedy villain, but still convincing.
That was Renee Bergeron, Odo from DS9. What I also love is when Nick tells him at the end, when the catch him, goes, it's real, it's not an act. He just goes, all right, and he just hits him. It's like if he had known it wasn't real the whole time, he would have just knocked him out.
I found it amusing, the golf balls that kept falling out of his bag as he was walking along. I was thinking to myself, how many balls can you fit in a bag?
And also, and a lot, and Mission Impossible was the first time I watched the film in years, and the whole arc by him, the whole story about him getting into the wrong car, in the funeral car, and he ends up spending most of the film with this family who this family member had died, and he just ends up going to their house and becomes for the business family. Quite funny. And then and he just bumps into the villain as he's going to the bathroom, and then ends up having a fight with him and saves the day. 2 other characters who are memorable. Obviously, Tackleberry, who's like a big child who just loves guns, and the bigger the gun, the more he loves it.
And in the second movie, when he meets his wife, and he's it's love at first sight when she is into guns as him and her family are the way they are. I think her family actually frighten him a bit and intimidate him a bit.
Do you think he was underused though? I thought in some ways he was underused in some movies.
I think, yeah, because what I liked was that they did keep bringing back his family, and then one of them he had a son, and I think to myself, if they're going to do a remake, or a reboot or whatever you want to call it, that they should have an actor come in to be Tackleberry's son, because his whole family, his in-laws, they joined the police. His brother-in-law was it that joined the police. So it would be very in keeping with it if his son actually turned out to be, in a new
also
movie.
Tackleberry's father-in-law and Anna's brother-in-law, they always seem to have this rivalry going where who can punch the other hardest.
Wrestle each other to the ground, punch each other. Yeah, nuts family, just completely nuts. And the mother just thinks it's playful.
Yeah, she just comes in with the tray of dinner. Ah, you guys.
My favorite scene with the father-in-law. I love the scene where his son is in this sort of police boxing match. He's absolutely getting whipped, and the father climbs into the ring and punches him hard in the face because he's saying, "No son of mine's getting beat," sort of thing. Punches him hard in the face, and then he goes off to win the boxing match. I thought that was hilarious.
Also, Lieutenant Callahan, Debbie Callahan, the one woman all the men want to see because they, always wearing the tight tops and always, whenever she always plays the victim after, he goes, "So, who wants to rescue me?" And all the men go, "Oh, yeah, I don't know."
And she was in Laverne and Shirley, which was I don't know if you remember that show, but it used to be on BBC One many years ago. And she was like she was like one of the characters when they in the later series of it. But so she had it was a sitcom. So she had a sort of a comedy background too. But I was actually reading that she wasn't sure that she could pull it off in the auditions. So in the audition, she basically intimidated them and got the gig. So but she is a brilliant example of whenever you hear people talk about old movies and things, and they say women were written badly, you think to yourself, well, yes, she's sexualized, that's true, but she is the one sexualizing herself. She is in control. She's not written as a piece of meat for people. Like, she will knee you in the balls if she doesn't want
And
anything
she's
to do
probably
with you.
the most competent cop out of that group in a lot of ways. She can handle herself.
Even in later ones, when she's kind of partnered with Tackleberry, she's keeping Tackleberry at bay with his gun, with his trigger finger.
And even in the Mission to Moscow one, where she, whenever Ron Perlman had taken a fancy to her, she was dressed up, to be like undercover to, try and find out information, and she was able to handle herself even with him, him being, a misogynist, villain or whatever you want to call it, but she was able to, defend herself. Whenever they arrived, she had taken care of it. They weren't, although they were arriving to rescue her. When they got there, they didn't have to do anything. She'd sorted it. She was just putting her uniform back on.
She's always a very aggressive lover.
She likes young men.
But she's the one that has made those decisions to do that. In a lot of movies, they go through this whole thing of someone, if it's a romance, that it's a woman, that a certain set of things happen. Not with her. With her, it's just, that's it. And I know it's a comedy, and I know, yes, people were the joke about her. Does anyone want any help or whatever? That was for comedy value. That wasn't to degrade her. All these red-blooded males, of course, are going to want the well-built blonde. But it never kind of degraded her or anything. She was up for it and could stand her own ground. You can say what you like about the naffness or the sort of comedy that those movies have, but at least the characters and the performances as well as that are solid. So I think the worse the movies get, and I say worse, I mean that's probably not the right word, but when the quality dips, the performances keep you entertained, don't they?
Yeah, like what I was talking about, her, how aggressive she is when she's initiating, because you see with Nagato in 3 and 4, and then George, in the first one, she's the one who pulls him in there and starts, initiates it. Like her line to Nagato in the third was, "In America, talk is cheap." And also, I guess that brings us to the antagonists of the series.
Hold on a minute. Antagonists? Harris is the hero in the first one, I think. Get me out on this. The Sword is old, a bumbling idiot. Harris thinks he deserves the job and can do a better job. He is trying to save the Academy. Is that not him being a hero?
Harris, by and large, even in the last film, he although he has a problem, with people, he doesn't want any of them to die, and he, in a way, in the last film, he actually was actually more open with his feelings than he was in any of the other movies, in the sense that he wanted to. He was like, oh well, this is my team, you know. And he also said in one of the other ones, I forget which one it was, that I think it was maybe the one before that, where he 6 or something, where he said every single one of these people I trained, you know. So he was kind of proud in a way of these people there. His pomposity and his ego are his
I
downfall.
mean, I was joking when I said he's the hero, but I do think he's the character that probably entertained me the most throughout the films. I think if Harris hadn't been in the later films, I wouldn't have liked him half as much. His and his sort of play with Proctor, the sort of back and forth between the two sort of antagonists, are brilliant.
When he got together with Proctor, Proctor was the bumbling sidekick, and I think the chemistry between them, and they saw in one of the other movies he described their relationship as family. You know, somehow it was somehow related, and so that's why he's sort of lumped with him, because neither of those two would suffer each other for any other reason. I mean, obviously Proctor's a bit naive as well. He's kind of naive. Harris needs someone to prop up his ego, and that's really what Proctor does. Even though he's not very he's not very competent as a cop. He's someone that Harris can at least be better than and say, well, all right, I might be awful, but I'm not as bad as you.
That's a good point. Is Harris actually a better cop?
In Harris's mind, he's a better cop than Proctor. But none of he thinks he's better than everybody, but none of the other ones he thinks he's better than will tell him that. Whereas Proctor at least will feed that. He looks up to him, whereas the others don't. They treat him with contempt. So in Harris's mind, it's partly to stroke his ego as to why if he hangs around with this guy who is worse than him, then he looks better, and that I think he always try in any of the situations. That's what Harris is looking for, because he wore the dressy uniform and he was trying to say, like he was somebody important. There was one, and they said, he's only a captain, and they just went, they moved on, the press, they moved on.
The other thing is, I think,
Thaddeus Harris.
Thaddeus Harris. I think you said, Ian, is that I think you put out as well, Johnny, that his reactions to the pranks, I think, are funnier than Mauser's reactions.
It's the ego thing, you see. If he sets himself up to be. He's better than everybody else. Why am I dealing with these plebs? I should be king. That kind of attitude. So when he is obviously, it's a bit like a class thing. In the UK, it would be like a class system. Be a bit like Basil Fawlty. He wants to think he's better than the working class people. Although he is working class, but he looks up to the middle class and above. So that's where Harris is. Harris is always wanting to endear himself to people better than him, and when he falls, it's the actual actor is able to give that performance across of someone who's been taken down a peg, basically. If they make him look like a fool, like especially when he was walking around with that chair, when he was stuck to the chair, glued to the chair, and they kept trying to partially dismantle the seat, so when he sat on it he fell, because he's trying to impress himself to the commissioner and to everybody else to say, listen, I'll come in and sort this out for you. I don't need you people. I can do this myself. But then when he's made a fool of, then that's where his character goes into his own, because he then, the performance after that, like when he was walking around, he was pretending to, when people came by, he sat down on the seat and was pretending to just be sitting there, rather than say, look, I got this thing glued to my backside, sorry, pardon me. No, he didn't want to admit that.
The thing though was when he has that glued to his ass, and then the next thing he's in the mayor's office, and you think the joke's over, but when he leaves the mayor's office and stands up, He said he still got the chair attached to him. And then the mayor sort of, gets on the phone and says, find out why Harris has a chair stuck to his ass. It just, they know, they know how to carry a joke and when to let it go. My name's Ian Lawler. I'm launching a YouTube channel. There'll be a blog with reviews. So if you want to check it out, it's ianlawler.com. But it'd be great if you could check my content out. Thank you very much.
Hi there. If you've been enjoying our content, we'd be extremely grateful if you could like the video and comment. We're always happy to hear, interested to see your take on things. But more importantly than that, if you can subscribe. And if you can also click on the bell thingy, because that will let you know when the video is there. And we're trying to get to 100 subscribers. So if you can see your way to, helping us out there, that would be amazing. Anyway, back to the video. Now, the first film was directed by Hugh Wilson. 2 and 3 were directed by Jerry Paris. And from my understanding of it, they wanted him to direct the rest of them. But Jerry Paris was in the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he played Dick Van Dyke's neighbor in that show, which was a sitcom, and he directed some of the episodes, and that led to him directing a lot of Happy Days episodes, and so his comedy background really helped. But unfortunately, I was just doing some research to see what happened. Why? Because they were going to be filming 3 and 4 back to back, but because he died, they didn't do that. And the reason was that because doctors discovered a brain tumor, and unfortunately he died in 1986 before the filming began. Those other directors for those other movies, like Jim Drake, Alan Meyerson, Peter Boners, if that's how you say his name. I don't know those guys.
Obviously, let's face it, if it was their first time directing a film, I'm sure that the quality of Police Academy sequels probably made sure it was their last one.
I can't tell you how it makes me feel to be received so very, very generously into your family.
There's nothing more enjoyable than some visually appealing footage. Trees, rocks, rivers. But there is one thing that's a little bit more enjoyable, and that's when you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you could do that for us right this moment, we'll be as happy as a Labrador in the snow wagging his tail. Thanks. An interview with Ron Perlman saying that quite gleefully that he was quite happy that he killed the Police Academy franchise. Think about what you're watching here. It's if you go into a Police Academy movie wanting Gone with the Wind, then you're in the wrong movie. If you want stupid humor, you want ridiculous people, that's the one for you.
Also, the thing about the 7th one is, you talk about the budget for Mission Moscow, and I think it showed in the game because the prop for the game was the original Game Boy, and in the start you could tell that there was no cartridge in the Game Boy, and later on, and when you see the graphics of the screen, you're going, you know that's a cutaway because the graphics in that Game Boy were not
Capable of that, yeah.
that detailed.
But I mean, in a comedy movie, that doesn't matter. I mean, um, but I think it was a case of, they had a franchise and they thought, let's see if we can get maybe one more movie out of it, squeeze one more movie out of it. You know,
Well, I honestly think the reason they came back, this is just from my memory, is that people were crying out for another movie, and a lot of fans were like, "Please make more." Whenever the actors were out and about, and I guess it was a form of a cash in to say, "Well, look, we don't want to spend the money, but look, if we make this and it works, we'll spend the money later," or something like that. I don't really know what their thinking was, but I do remember at the time a lot of people saying they want more. But I think people wanted,
be careful what you ask for. Yeah,
yeah, they wanted a good one, and I think that's what
seven
happened.
seven movies is extremely impressive for a comedy series like that.
But I remember at the time not being disgusted, but just kind of being tired of it. And when I saw the seventh one, I thought, no, I don't know if you ever get like that, but I was just like, no, I'm not watching another one of these. I'm not watching another one of these.
There's one other character who wasn't in all of them, but he was in a few. Factor to the Accent Pro. Yeah, he just walks around and he causes injury and destruction all around him, but never gets injured himself.
Yeah.
He's not aware.
How many movies was he in?
He was in the first two, and then he came back for six. Remember?
Back for the sixth. Yeah.
Remember number six? He just walks around there. He drops a pet, and a candle falls into the fireworks and all, and he just walks to the opposite. A guy trips on the pencil, he drops on the floor. Whereas in the first one, he's driving the car's wife's on the bottom of the car. I just feel like I don't want to be the same room as Factor because he's a nice guy, but I'd be worried for my safety if I was in the same room as Factor. The joke I always remember from the first one, but I didn't realise it was in the first four. The Blue Oyster Club.
Yes.
I always remember from the first one, but I forgot about being in the sequels because Proctor ended up in the third one.
Yeah, the gay bar that the antagonists always seem to end up in.
Yeah.
As part of one of Mahoney's pranks.
Yes, and they end up very popular with the patrons of that place, don't they?
After half a century of opposition, the two largest world powers have finally begun working together. But now, just when we thought the Cold War was over, leave it to these guys to heat it up again.
May I kiss you again? No, you may not.
Police Academy, mission to Moscow.
To kick many, many buttskis.
Those fearless five from the Force are together again on a mission of peace and understanding. The Cold War may be over, but give them time. They just got here. Police Academy, mission to Moscow.
Let's talk about number 7 for a moment, because in 7, when they were bringing it back, they only, they were limited into what they could do in terms of money, and they brought back 5 people, and they were originally going to bring back Harris wasn't one of the original people they were bringing back. It was going to be Hightower, but he said if they didn't bring Marion Ramsey Hooks, they didn't bring her back, he wasn't doing it, so they didn't, and he left, and they brought in Harris. And the thing is, you have to think to yourself, when they're doing the casting, the thing about it was such a good movie in terms of representation. They got people from all walks of life in there, so they did a bit of a disservice in the 7th movie, I think, with that, that they didn't bring them back, I just think, it's because Hightower was in all the movies, like Bubba Smith, especially him being a former football star. I think there was a bit disrespectful, to let him just walk like that. I mean, I don't think that would happen today.
I think the truth is, when you watch a Police Academy movie, you want to see as many originals as possible. Bubba Smith had been in them all at that point, so it was strange. And even Hooks, okay, I mean, she didn't get a lot in some of the later ones, but it's like it's almost like when a Police Academy movie came out, I suppose it's a bit like going to see a family you haven't seen in a while. These catching up with characters and
And going back to the sixth one, from one of the things I did like was when Nicholas Sard goes into the underground with Tackleberry, Hightower, and Jones. Tackleberry, Hightower, and Jones have individual fights with the three, the three villains who are working for the main mastermind, but they're kind of matched with their counterpart of them. Like Tackleberry fights with the villain played by Garrett Graham, who's the expert at the guns. The ones who could do the high flips and the karate, fights with Jones, and the big guy, the big strong one with the beard, had it off with Hightower. So they're being put against their counterparts of the three villains. I quite like that, especially the only time where Hightower got mad when his name badge got loose. I do like when Tackleberry's had like a show off with the other villain. He draws like a happy face. The villain draws a happy face as far as holes to make a happy face, and Tackleberry does have a nice day, and he goes, "It's been really great talking to us here, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to arrest you now." Then I do love Jones when he does obviously it was no excuse for Jones to do his karate joke, the one where he does the badly dubbed voiceover.
You watch a lot of those kung fu movies from back in the day. They are like that, and I like the way Jones has taken that on, because that's what you do. It's taking the piss out of them, but I love it. It's almost like one of his catchphrases. If he did the martial arts thing without doing that, you'd be disappointed.
I did find it funny also when he does he plays the robot bit when he
yeah, that was really good. That was playing into his doing that sort of noise with his voice. Having not seen these movies for a while, my main take on them is that the later ones, though the quality dips, are still entertaining. You have a certain soft spot for the characters, and no matter how sort of average the plot is, their acting and the characters are what bring you through. And as you said, Ian, I mean, I don't know what that seventh movie would have been like without Harris, because he kind of made
they had like a counterpart to Harris, one of the Russians.
Yes, and as I
And I'm
pointed
just
out,
thinking,
the
if
big
it
red
was
burger.
just him, I just don't think the movie would have worked as well.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, because Lazar got the cars mixed up and he spends the entire most of the film with his family, who are probably going, who the hell is this guy? And he somehow manages to become good friends with them. Harris kind of becomes the unofficial leader for them in the seventh one.
There's another character that we've completely ignored, the goldfish.
Oh yes.
And he doesn't appear in... The goldfish does not appear in the sixth one, which we noticed. But other than that, is in all the movies,
That
really.
goldfish has had so many close calls with death. But it almost became a character onto itself. You expected the goldfish to show up, whether it was just um, being the sword talking to it, or packing it in a suitcase, which again, it just looked like he packed the whole fishbowl in a suitcase, and you could see it going through security. It was funny.
This fish is boiling. Oh, you want stir fry?
I guess another classic scene with the start in the first movie is the podium scene where
Yes,
where
he gets a very happy ending there, yes.
He fakes Mahoney, did it because Mahoney was stuck in it because he's trying to get rid of it. It was set up. She started to set up Mahoney, but Mahoney's trying to get rid of it.
It was kind of a running gag, if you'll excuse the pun, but yeah, it was. Because they mentioned it again, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think after Mission to Moscow, I mean, I don't know what else you do with the franchise, really.
If you were doing it now, there's so many modern things that have happened since the 80s that you could throw in there. I do think that there's a finite number of things you can do in the one location. They went to Moscow for the 7th one. They went to Miami for the 6th one, or 5th one, sorry. They moved around. If you're in the one location, it's very difficult to really come, unless it's something like sci-fi, where you can, bring in fantastical things to fantasy and science, and you could have it anywhere. You could film
We could have them train as astronauts and have to go and rescue the International Space Station. This is why I don't work in Hollywood, by the way, with ideas like that.
The Citizens on Patrol. I mean, that is a real legitimate thing that happened, and it actually has happened in the UK. Now, you've got community policing. They were basically extra help for the police. So, the idea of that, is real. And obviously for comedy value, it's even more ridiculous the way they do it. You would really need to sit down and think, well, what kind of stuff could we get out of this before we start going over old ground again? Because I don't think they thought it was going to be as popular as it was.
I've read a few interviews online, and it wasn't as if that when they done the first one, they thought, oh, we're going to make 7 of these movies.
So that's the problem. You could do more of them, definitely, but the only way you could keep them moving is to rotate the cast, which is what they did, really. You brought in a lot of Saturday Night Live people, and even before some of them were on Saturday Night Live. It only works when there's something new and fresh. Obviously, you have the main characters as well. There was arguments about how much screen time people were getting, and the egos come into play. So you have to do a lot of negotiating that way. But I do think, there is a limit as to how many legitimate movies you could make from that situation.
Oh, absolutely, and the fact that they got to 7, I wouldn't have thought you would have got anywhere near that.
And they were starting to cover over old ground in the last 3 movies as well.
As I said, it's like, what prank are they going to play in Captain Harris this time?
I think with comedy movies, it's a very easy trap to go into.
If you want to look at, say, a TV show like Dad's Army or Hello Hello, where they're catchphrase laden, so it's they don't like it up and don't panic, stupid boy, all that kind of stuff. They have a lot of like pathos in those, and there is a lot of comedy, but each individual episode there is something about it that has its own uniqueness. People that like those shows like the humor. They expected a certain thing to happen. They expected a certain catchphrase. Yeah. But the quality was always up. You got to be selective as to what kind of material you're going to get out of something. And I think if you make a movie about cops, you could. I mean, there's plenty of procedural shows out there, but how do you keep the comedy fresh? And I think the way they've done it, I don't see at that period of time, at least, how they could have done anything differently. Unless the cops themselves were trying to parody certain things each time, but I don't know. I honestly don't know how you would make that work. Like, say for example, if it was a police, like acting, so that if they were police, but then they, each of the characters were trying to do a play or make a movie, or if there was something else they were doing other than being police as well, that's the kind of thing where you would add more stuff. But for them, the comedy comes from them training and being inept, but still coming through, and that has been the theme for the entire series of movies. And so, just to conclude, then, do you think there should be a new series of movies?
I would certainly try one. Whether there would be a series, Who knows?
Well, I would assume that it's the original producer that would do it, but in terms of people directing it and writing it and all that sort of thing, there's a lot of talent out there now for for comedy writing. There's a lot of shows out.
Oh, I certainly think it could be done. You know, whether it's something that the audience would want back.
Unfortunately, there are some jokes in the original Police Academy that the current millennials might take offense to.
I was going to say comedy. Comedy has changed a fair bit since the 80s, but the actual concept, of them being sort of unlikely recruits to the police department, that that would still work today as much as it did back then.
It would have to be modernized in the sense of the type of characters that would be applying to the police that would be funny would be different to the original movie. But what I would say is the original movie was diverse, not just diverse in terms of race, but diverse in terms of you've got the kind of jocks and nerds and ladies man, and all the characters came from all walks of life, and that's part of the charm of the show or the movies, is that they bring these characters together and try and whip them into shape. So that comedy's always going to work, but I think you would need to write it for today. So the people, the kind of people that would join, like for example, you would get like emo people now, and instead of Zed, I mean, there's still people like that, but there's comedy gold out there, for the type of people, and it would just have to be done right so that it was above all funny and not trying to make some kind of political point.
You don't want to offend people, so you don't want to play stereotypes. Obviously, you'd have to. I don't know if you could do the Blue Oyster joke now, because obviously people will take offense to.
That's what I mean. You'd have to do it in the style of the original movies, but you would have to, update it a lot. But I think it can be done, and I think if Steve Guttenberg, who has said he's up for it, if he's on board, and you've got Michael Winslow and I'm trying to think, Callahan is there, Harris. Obviously, who else?
Proctor could still be there.
Proctor, yeah. Is Sweet Chuck's alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. Yeah.
So there's a fair amount of people. I mean, Bobcat Goldthwait, for example, if he was up for it, I don't know that he would do it actually, but I think he retired. That was a stand-up persona.
I don't know if they were to redo it. I think it would be more likely it would be a complete new cast with cameos from a few.
I do think you're probably going to have your Amy Schumers and James Corden types if you did it today.
Well, as long as it's funny, I don't care who's in it. That's the kind of thing. I mean, Amy Schumer's got good comedy background. I mean, whether you find her funny or not, that's subjective. But she's done the stand-up, and she's certainly got the qualifications to be in it, for sure, definitely. And I think the overall take of the movies is the cynical attitude of them being terrible. I mean, they're still not good. I still stand by the first maybe 4, maybe 5, but certainly 4 movies I can't complain about. After that, I enjoy them, but they're definitely not as good. And I think people, if you can, did you say, Neil, that there's a box set of them?
Yeah.
I mean, I would encourage people to get the box set, or if you can view them on streaming services somewhere. I would think if they're Warner Brothers, something like HBO Max, but in the UK, I'm not sure where they would be streamed.
You can probably download them for a charge, probably on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly give the first one a go and see how you find
Bear
it.
in mind, these are movies from the 80s, and just judge them on the time they were made, because there are some things. I mean, Harris does come off with some lines in the first movie about Hightower and about Hooks, and I would say they're definitely derogatory, although I don't think they're intentionally meant to be insulting in that way, but just more of a case of Harris being one of those kind of narrow-minded, pompous assholes. That's the kind of thing where it's coming from. But I just know that maybe people today might not want to be subjected to that sort of thing. So just, as I say, take them as when they're from. I mean, the rest of the movies, as far as I know, that sort of thing doesn't happen. But there are certain phrases now that people wouldn't use, let's put it that way. Not even just about that, but in referring to people's mental health and things, there's certain phrases that people wouldn't use. But, other than that, I would say, yeah, I think you would be hooked once you watch that one. Just treat it like it is, it's just meant to be a bit of fun. It's, nobody gets hurt and at the end by watching them, so...
Well, I think a horse may have got hurt in the first one.
But not for real, though. What about you, Ian? What's your final thoughts on it?
Very enjoyable. It is just silly comedy, and it's the sort of thing, I might put on a Sunday afternoon or evening if I just wanted to relax and watch something that I really don't have to think too much about, that has interesting characters and is fun. The plots are ridiculous, especially as they go on. But the characters are just so much fun.
Neil, what about you? What's your final thoughts on the series of movies?
I've always enjoyed them ever since I was a kid, so it was good to revisit them. Obviously, the first couple, especially the first one and the second one, are probably the best of the films. And obviously you'll enjoy those ones. Now, if you like those ones, or you could keep going. But I do think the first couple are the stronger entries.
Actually, I'm going to press you all. Favorite character for me, I am going to have to say Harris, just because he's unlikable, but G.W. Bailey makes him I wouldn't say makes him likable, but makes him fun to watch.
Yeah, because even the bit at the start of the sixth film where he gets pissed off at Proctor for singing Christmas songs in the autumn time, you can sympathise with him.
Who's your favourite character, Neil?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I do like Jones. I think Jones is always a good laugh, especially some of the voices he does. There's some interesting performances. So I do have a soft spot for Jones, even though he became a bit one note, with his voices.
If you're pushing these for just one, I agree with Johnny. It's Harris. But to me, there's two characters that I need in those movies, and that's Harris and Lazard. Because, Harris, Harris's whole problem in the movies, he hates Lazard. It's not so much that he hates the team, he's jealous of him, and that theme is throughout the movies. And what makes it even more interesting is Lazard doesn't realize how much Harris hates him. And without that, I think the movies would lose a lot. But but then there's Steve Guttenberg, that really, he's the lead. He's the lead actor, and when he left again, it started to go downhill.
I think I do agree with what you say about Harris. I think if Harris wasn't in the films, especially in the post Guttenberg era, the films wouldn't be as funny, because the easy thing about they all have their own traits, but the one thing that kept the sequels going were the scenes of Harris and Proctor, and what were they going to do to the Harris, and that bring him down a peg. So I do agree that without Harris, that the later films would not be as good as they were. Though I think 7 did lose some with Proctor not being there. Because I think he lost half the double act. Because I do think Harris and Proctor, it's the double act that makes it as well.
In the first movie, you get to know Harris, but he doesn't have the fall guy that is Proctor. But once he comes back and he's got Proctor, that's when he starts to shine. I mean, he's great in the first movie, but as you say, they're a double act, really.
I mean, obviously, in the first movie, he sort of had the two, or the recruits as well, that he uses to try and get Mahoney and what have you. But I mean, they're not as effective as say Proctor's character.
I do think in the first one he is more of a straight antagonist because he's the trader. He's the one trading them, but he wants them to fail so he can prove that their scheme's not working. So whereas in the later ones he's just inept and trying to get the sergeant's job.
And so that brings us to a close, and you can catch Ian over on ianlawther.com. Isn't that right, Ian?
That's right. Hopefully, I'll be launching a YouTube review channel. But if you go to ianlawther.com now, you'll see links to some of the Schmat videos I've been in. So yeah, check out the videos, give us a like, and please subscribe. Pretty please. There's going to be a blog page on the website with updates, so yeah, just keep checking back to ianlawther.com. We're going to be starting with the top 5 of my favorite James Bond games. So that's really the first video at some point. I don't have a date yet, but hopefully you'll stick with me and give it a watch when it comes on.
And from us, thank you very much for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe, because if you don't subscribe, we go home and cry into our pillows, and you don't want that, do you? Unless you do, you nasty person. But it's goodbye from me.
That's goodbye from me.
And I suppose that means it's goodbye from me.